Hello, hello, hello. Welcome. For those of you who are watching me for the very first time, my name is James Ambroise, and on this channel we'll cover how to pay off debt faster than any other debt repayment method out there. We cover basic bookkeeping and accounting for someone who just started out a small business. We cover basic personal income tax to include a Schedule C, Schedule E, depreciation. I am also the author creator of Ambroise Method 1.0 and Ambroise Method 2.0. Ambroise Method is a revolutionary debt repayment method that offers greater results in terms of reducing interest cost compared to debt snowball, debt avalanche, velocity banking. Real quick about my credentials. I have been or am a bookkeeper and accountant, QuickBooks Pro advisor, senior tax advisor, residential real estate investor, residential property manager, financial coach. And as always, before we get started with what's on the board, please allow me to shout out the name Jesus, my Lord, my God, my Creator. Thank you. All right, America, on the board we have this hypothetical scenario of somebody who filled out one of my Microsoft Excel worksheets, and the person provided me with these figures for that. This person has a Navy Federal credit card, Regions personal line of credit, Best Tech personal loan. Credit limit $4,000, APR 18%, balance owed $3,720, monthly payments charged $93. Availability, America, remember from prior lessons that the availability is the relationship between the credit limit and the balance owed. That relationship calls for a subtraction operation. 4,000 minus $3,720. That's how we have at 280 bucks. Credit utilization. Credit utilization is the relationship between between the balance owed and the credit limit. That relationship calls for a division operation. $3,720 divided by 5,000. That's how we arrive at 93%. Payment rate charge. Payment rate charge is the relationship between the monthly payments charged and the balance owed. That relationship calls for a division operation. $93 divided by $3,720. That's how we arrive at 2.50%. Okay. Now on the Navy Federal credit card, the statement date on the Navy Federal is on the 4th of the month. Okay. On the Regions personal line of credit, it is a 2-3 personal line of credit. So 2-year draw, 3 years repayment, so 5 years total. Okay. Right now we're in year 1 of 5. Regions personal line of credit, Region is charging 3% for principal and interest. So they're charging a flat fee, 3%. Principal and interest. Remember, I mentioned to you guys from past lessons that these personal line of credit are not always interest only. You got some companies like Regions that charges principal and interest. Even though it's a personal line of credit, they still charge principal and interest. In this example, it is a flat fee of 3% of the outstanding balance, $16,150. We're assuming that's the outstanding balance. Okay. Now the statement date on the Regions personal line of credit is on the 1st of this month. Okay. Now for Best Tech personal loan, it is a 5-year personal loan. Right now we're inside year 5 of 5, and the statement date for Best Tech personal loan is on the 3rd of this month. Okay. Now we're doing a scenario for a single mom. Her income, she's on a bi-weekly pay period, so she gets paid on the 7th. And the next paycheck will come 14 days later on the 21. Okay? The total for the 2 paychecks after tax, $5,297.80. Her debt, $24,117.38. The debt, that's when you add all these balances that we have on the board. 3,720 plus 16,150 plus $4,247.38. That's how we arrive at $24,117.38. Her expenses, $5,047.80. The expense, that's when we add all these amounts that we have on the board, every single one of them. Okay. And the total again $5,047.80. Now, out of these expenses, $2,780 could go on a credit card. These are the bills that could go on a credit card. Electricity could go on a credit card. Water, YouTube TV, Netflix, T-Mobile, groceries, fuel, dining out, beauty and skincare, clothes and shoes, car insurance, all of them could go on a credit card. When you add them up, the total $2,780. Okay. Now, single mom, her cash flow, $250. Remember, America, from prior lessons, that cash flow is the relationship between the income and the expense. That relationship calls for a subtraction operation, $5,297.80 minus $5,047.80. That's how we arrive at $250 in cash flow. Okay? All right, America. I'll give you about 5 seconds to take a look at what's on the board, and then we're going to start with the exercise. All right, America. Remember that Ambroise Method calls for a series of steps, and those steps have to be taken at least once a month. And the steps: segregate, compare, transfer, repeat. Then we have the C.A.R.E. C.A.R.E. stands for C for condition, A for adjustment, R for restrictions, and E for exception. Okay. Sometimes when you're using Ambroise Method, you might come across some condition to the strategy. You might have to make some adjustment to the strategy. You might have some restriction. You might have some exceptions to the strategy. Okay. That's our C.A.R.E. 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 Okay. All right, so cash flow, again, going back to the steps: segregate, compare, transfer, repeat. Cash flow or large payment, then we have to insert the what? WHT. W, which account or accounts to use. H, how much of a payment to send to these accounts. And T, to pay down or off which debt. These are the steps for Ambroise Method. Again, those steps have to be taken, America, at least once a month. All right. All right, so now let's segregate. The way we segregate, America, we segregate by account types. That's looking at the list of debt, and I prefer my revolving credit account on top and my installment credit account at the bottom. Navy Federal credit card, that's revolving credit account. Regions personal line of credit is a revolving credit account when we are still in a draw period. And again, it's a 2-3 personal line. Right now we're in year 1 of 5, so we're still inside 2 years. Okay? So, and again, America, remember from past lessons that for our purpose, a P-lock or an E-lock is considered revolving for our purpose only when it is still in a draw period. When it is in a repayment period, it is no longer considered a revolving credit account. So it's going to fall under the installment credit account category. And again, for our purpose only when we're using Ambroise Method. Okay. So far we have 2 revolving. Best Egg Personal Loan is an installment credit account, so that's installment. So between the two, we have between the 2 revolving, and again, when we segregate it, I like my revolvings on top and my installment at the bottom. Navy Federal credit card revolving, P-lock revolving. We are in a draw period. Best Egg Personal Loan installment, so it's at the bottom. Okay. So as far as segregation, our list is perfect. Next, America, we compare. In the way we compare by APR between account types. Remember, we have 2 revolving. Okay. And when we're comparing, I prefer the higher APR on top. Well, 18 between the 2 revolving credit account. 18 is bigger than 12, so 18 is listed first. Okay. Best Egg is a different kind. Best Egg is an installment. We do not have any other installment to compare with. Best Egg is, we only have 1 installment total. Okay. And when we compare America again, we're trying to identify the enemy. We're trying to identify the troublemaker. And the account that has the higher APR is generally the enemy. The account that has the higher APR is generally the troublemaker. So in this example, Best Tech Personal Loan, 30% is the troublemaker. Okay. Next, I'm working with transfer. Okay. And the way we transfer, we always try to relocate balances from a debt that has a higher APR. Okay, there goes the debt with a higher APR, Best Tech. There goes the balance. We're always trying to relocate these balances into debts that have lower APR. So we have multiple debts with lower APR, so it's going to be from absolute highest APR, 30%, to absolute lowest APR, 12%. Okay? So let's see if we could relocate some of that $4,247.38 and try to dump it onto the region's personal line of credit. Okay? But now, America, when we take a look at the region's personal line of credit, which has the lowest APR, regions, the credit utilization on the regions, 95%. Availability, 850. Balance owed, 16,150. Credit limit, 17,000. Okay? We are too close to the credit limit. 16,150 balance owed, 17,000 for credit limit. And again, the credit utilization, we're already in the 90s, 95%. Okay? So we have to be a little careful. Okay? So for that reason, since we're too close to saturation point, we're too close to 100%. Okay? So we're not going to do any transfer. So in this case, we're not going to relocate any of that $4,247.30 to the 16,150. We're not going to do any. Okay? Too close to saturation point again, 95%. Okay? So now we're going to try to relocate from absolute highest APR to the next lowest APR. The next one now is Navy Federal Credit Card, 18%. Okay? And again, America, when we take a look at the Navy Federal Credit Card, credit utilization, we are in the 90s, 93%, close to 100%. Availability is only $280. Balance owed, $3,720. Credit limit, $4,000. We're too close to the credit limit. $3,720. Balance owed, 4,000 credit limit, too close. And again, we're already in the 90s, 93%. Okay, so we have to be careful. So for that reason, we cannot relocate any of the balance from the higher APR to lower APRs. Cannot do any transfer in this particular example. And again, we're too close to saturation point. Okay, so now we can't do any transfer. Now let's see if we could repeat the transfer. Well, again, we did not do any transfer to begin with, so we cannot repeat any transfer. Okay? All right, going back to the step. Next steps now, can we use cash flow or can we make a large payment? Okay? Single mom during this period did not receive any income tax refund. Single mom during this period did not receive any bonus check. Single mom during this period did not receive any additional funds or money that would constitute or represent a large payment. So we do not have a large payment. In this case, we're going to be dealing with cash flow. Okay? So now let's figure out how much our new cash flow is. Okay? The original cash flow was $250. The new cash flow is still going to be $250. Why? And again, we did not do any transactions at all. We did not do any transfer. We did not repeat the transfer. Okay? So cash flow is still going to stay the same. All right? Now, let's go back to our steps. Now we're done with cash flow. So W, which account or accounts to use? Remember, America, in our method, we have two different types of users. We have what we call a normal user and we have what we call an advanced user. Okay. In America, remember, when you're paying off debt, you're going to come across three main elements, three main assignments, three main jobs. And these elements, these assignments, these jobs are transfer, alternative account, and cash flow. Okay? That's our tag. When you're paying off debt, you're going to come across these three items, generally. Okay? T for transfer, A for alternative account, and C for cash flow. Okay? And a normal user, America, on our method, takes advantage of transfer, takes advantage of cash flow. A normal user on our method does not take advantage of the alternative account. Why? Because they don't quite understand the alternative account yet. Okay? An advanced user, on the other hand, takes advantage of every item that we have on the board. An advanced user takes advantage of transfer. An advanced user takes advantage of the alternative account. An advanced user takes advantage of cash flow. And again, folks, for our method, Ambroise method, we have these two different type of users, a normal user and an advanced user. Okay? Now, if you fall under a normal user category, obviously you're going to take advantage of transfer, you're going to take advantage of cash flow. Well, in this particular example, we did not do any transfer. So now we're going to try to take advantage of cash flow for a normal user. For a normal user uses the regular checking account to pay off debt. Okay? And the way it's going to work for a normal user, as the income start coming in, okay, let's assume these two paychecks were equal, so half of it on the 7th and half of it on the 21. Okay? So for a normal user, you're going to deposit all that income into the checking account. Okay? And you're going to use the funds in the checking account to pay off these bills, these expenses. Okay? Every item that America are going to receive the minimum payment or whatever regular payment. Any excess payment, in this case earlier we identified that the excess payment is $250. That excess payment will go to the account that has the higher APR. And the account that has a higher APR we identified earlier, that's Best Tech Personal Loan. Okay? And again, folks, for a normal user, as the income start coming in, deposit all that income into the checking account. Then you're going to use the checking account to pay off these bills, these expenses. Okay? Every item going to receive minimum payment or the regular payment. Any excess, in this example, $250 was the excess. The excess will go to the account that has the higher APR, which is Best Tech Personal Loan. Okay? That was for a normal user. Okay? But now we're doing a scenario for an advanced user. America, on our method for an advanced user, we're always trying to identify three main accounts. Okay? The first one is first in line, or the account for greater results. In terms of reducing interest cost, then we have the next in line, or the account for greater liquidity. And finally, we look for the alternative account. movements of income and movements of expenses. Okay? And again, folks, on our method, for an advanced user, we're always trying to identify these three main accounts. Okay? The first in line account, or the account for greater results in terms of reducing interest cost. The next in line account, or the account for greater liquidity. And finally, the alternative account for movements of income and movements of expenses. Okay? All right, let's try to figure out our account for an advanced user. Okay? The first in line account, or the account for greater results in terms of reducing interest cost, is generally the account with the higher APR. Where earlier we identified that Best Egg has the higher APR. So this one will be Best Egg. And again, folks, when we send payment to the higher APR, we generally achieve greater results in terms of reducing interest costs. That is why Best Egg is our account for first in line, or the account for greater results. Okay. Next, the next in line account, or the account for greater liquidity. All right, well, let's take a look. Best Egg personal loan is a personal loan, so Best Egg can offer us greater liquidity. Okay, so Best Egg got disqualified. Navy Federal credit card, it's a credit card, so Navy Federal could offer us liquidity because we could have income going into the Navy Federal and expenses could go out of the Navy Federal. Not only that, we did say that $2,780 could go on a credit card. Okay, so Navy Federal is a possible choice, one of the choices that we may have. Regions personal line of credit, it is a personal line of credit. We could move money in and out of the Regions personal line of credit. Okay, so Regions will also offer us liquidity. Okay, so now we have two accounts that will offer us liquidity. But remember, we're looking for greater liquidity. Okay, going back to the Navy Federal credit card again, Navy Federal credit card was limited. Only $2,780 could go on a credit card. Okay, so, but the Regions PLOC, you could move money in and out of the Regions PLOC. There's no restrictions there. Okay, Navy Federal was limited. Regions PLOC is not. Okay, so for that reason, they both offer us liquidity. But Navy Federal credit card was liquid up to bills, expenses that could go on a credit card, $2,780. But the expenses were a lot higher, $5,047.80. Okay, because the Navy Federal was limited. Okay, we're looking for the account for greater liquidity. Okay, Navy Federal is liquid, but does not offer us greater liquidity. Okay. So between the two, since Best Egg got disqualified, between those two that offer us liquidity, we're going to go with the Regions PLOC because Regions PLOC offers us greater liquidity. Okay. And the third and final account we're trying to identify is the alternative account for movements of income and movement of expenses. Now again, let's take a look. Let's start with Best Egg again. Best Egg is a personal loan, so Best Egg is not an alternative account. Remember our markup for our purpose. An alternative account is an account where income could come in and expenses could go up. In other words, deposit could come in and withdrawal could go up. Okay, Best Egg, okay, income could go in, but expenses cannot go up. Okay, so Best Egg is not an alternative account. Okay, Navy Federal credit card, income could go in, expense could go out. Regions personal line of credit, income could go in, expenses could go out. Okay, now again, we have two different accounts to choose from. But which one is it going to be for this alternative account for movements of income and movement of expenses? Okay. America, for the alternative account for movement of income and movement of expenses, we generally look for the account that has the higher APR. Okay? And between those two, Navy Federal credit card and Regions personal line of credit, Navy Federal has the higher APR. Okay? For that reason, our account for alternative account for movements of income and the movement of expenses is going to be the Navy Federal credit card. Okay? And again, to recap, the first line account, or the account for greater results in terms of reducing interest cost, is generally the account with the higher APR. And again, when you send payment to the higher APR, you generally achieve greater results. So Best Egg has the higher APR, so that's Best Egg. The next in line account, or the account for greater liquidity. Okay? Best Egg does not offer us liquidity at all, so Best Egg gets disqualified. Navy Federal offers liquidity. Regions PLOC offers liquidity. So now we have two accounts that we could use for this liquidity. But we're looking for greater liquidity. Okay? Navy Federal is liquid up to bills that could go on a credit card, because Navy Federal is a credit card. So Navy Federal is liquid up to $2,780 for those other bills. Okay? So Regions on the other end, there's no limit. Okay? You can move money in and out of the Regions ELOC with no problem. Okay? So for greater liquidity, between those two that offer liquidity, the one that has greater liquidity is the Regions personal line of credit. Okay? So the third and final account is the alternative account for movement of income and movement of expenses. Again, Best Egg is a personal loan. We cannot move money and income and expenses in the Best Egg. So with the Navy Federal, we could have movement of income and movement of expenses in the Navy Federal. With the Regions personal line of credit, we could also have movement of income and movement of expenses in the Regions personal line of credit. And again, we have two different accounts that we could choose from. And for this alternative account for movement, we generally look for the account that has the higher APR. Okay, between the two, Navy Federal credit card, 18%, Regions personal line of credit, 12%. The higher APR is 18%, and that 18% belongs to Navy Federal credit card. So Navy Federal will be our third account for alternative account for movements of income and movements of expenses. All right, America? So now let's figure out our numbers. Okay? So now we have the regular payment, or the minimum payment. We have bills that could go on a credit card. Okay? We have other remainder bills. Okay? We have cash flow. We have absorption, or absorption opportunity. Okay? Then our total. Okay? All right, let's figure out numbers. The regular payment for Best Egg, 485.30. Okay. The regular payment for Regions personal line of credit, Regions 484.50. 450. Okay. Navy Federal credit card. Minimum payment on the Navy is $93. Okay. Bills that could go on a credit card. Well, Best Tag is not a credit card. Regions Personal Line of Credit is not a credit card. Navy Federal credit card is a credit card. So, and earlier we identified that the bills that could go on a credit card, the total $2,780. Okay. Other remainder bills, let's skip that one for now. Cash flow. Remember our cash flow is $250. In America, cash flow is generally better served in the account that has the higher APR. And again, we identified that Best Egg has the higher APR. So cash flow will go to Best Egg. And again, America, when you send payment to the higher APR, you generally achieve greater results in terms of reducing interest cost. Okay? So now absorption, let's leave absorption alone for now. Let's go back to other remainder bills. Okay? Single mom, her total income is $5,297.80. So you'll be $5,297.80 minus all these amounts in order to come up with the other remainder bills. So minus $485.30 minus $250 minus $44.50 minus $93 minus $2,780. Okay. Other remainder bills are $1,205. Okay. All right. Which represents these bills. The allowance, $90. The prepaid college, $115. And the house rent, $1,000. When you add them up, it should be that $1,205. Let's run it. 90 plus 115 plus 1,000. Okay? Sure enough, $1,205. Okay? So it's this one, and that one. Okay? That's the other remainder bills. Because the 485.30, 485.30, 485.30, 484.50, 484.50. Okay? 250, that's the cash flow. $93, $93. 2,780. These are all these bills. The total 2,780. So the remainder 1,205 are these three. 90 plus 115 plus 1,000. Okay. All right. Okay. So now, America, when we take a look at the region's personal line of credit, okay, we have two amounts going to the region's personal line of credit. Okay, $1,205, which represent these bills, and $484.50, which is the minimum payment, the regular payment on the region's personal line of credit. Okay, region's personal line of credit, America, is at 12%. We do not want to send too much payment to an account that is at 12% when we have a 30% account on the board. For that reason, the account that offers greater results, in this case Best Egg, will absorb one of these two amounts from the lower APR account, which is Region's personal line. Okay? And again, we have 1205, which is these three. and $484.50, which is this one. Okay. So in this case, we know 1205 has took care of these bills. Okay. So now $484.50 will be what we're trying to absorb. Okay. America, remember earlier I mentioned condition adjustment restriction exceptions to the strategy. Okay. And we covered that from past lessons. When we are too close to the credit limit on the region's personal line of credit, 95%, okay, we're going to be a little less aggressive. Okay, we cannot absorb the entire amount. Okay, just like I mentioned to you guys from a past lesson, we're going to have either a no absorption or a partial absorption when we are too close to the credit limit. And again, on the regions, credit limit 17,000. We already, she holds 16,150 on the region's personal line of credit. Again, credit utilization 95%. We're already in the 90s. Okay, so we have to be less aggressive. Okay. So can I have a full absorption? So in this case, it's going to be a partial absorption, like I mentioned from a past lesson. Okay. Well, how much the partial absorption is going to be? Okay. So this is when, America, you have to know how regions arrive at that $484.50 for regular payment. Okay. On our note, regions charges 3% overall flat fee, and regions charges principal and interest. So an overall flat fee of 3% of the outstanding balance, okay, which covers principal and interest. Okay. All right, so let's break it down. So we have $484.50, which is made up of both principal and interest. Okay. For interest, region is charging 12% for the year. So if we do 12% for the year divided by 12, okay, to keep our math simple, we're at 1%. Okay, so in essence, region is charging 1%. Okay, for the month, for the cycle. Okay, so remember the total payment again, $484.50, which made up of principal and interest. Okay, so 12% divided by 12, 1%. Okay, they're charging overall flat fee 3% of the outstanding balance. Okay, so let's figure out the interest portion. So 1% of the outstanding balance, so 1% times 16,150. Okay, 1, 2. So now we are at $161.50. Okay, that's the interest portion. And again, they're charging an overall flat fee of 3% of the outstanding balance. The outstanding balance, we're assuming it's 16,150. Okay, 12% interest for the year. 12% divided by 12, which equal to about 1% for the month. 1% times the outstanding balance. 1% times 16,150. So $161.50 in interest. Okay, which means now that the remainder will go to principal. Our total was $484.50 minus $161.50. So the remainder is $323. Okay. That's how they arrive at 484.50. And again, it's 3% of the outstanding balance. So 3% of 16,150 is 484.50. Okay? 484.50 is both principal and interest. So let's try to itemize it to figure out how much our interest is. 12% divided by 12, 1%. 1% of 16,150 is $161.50 in interest. So the remainder will be principal. Okay. Now, earlier I told you guys that we cannot do a full absorption because we're too close to saturation point on the Regions personal line of credit. We're too close to 100%. In this case, it has to be either no absorptions or a partial absorption. Okay. And in situation like this, you're trying to figure out how they arrive at that 484.50. Our Regions arrive at that 484.50. We know it's made up of both principal and interest. So let's try to break it down. Let's try to itemize it. Okay? So in this case, we have already run the numbers. The principal will be $323 and the interest will be $161.50. Okay? So we're going to at least try to take care of our interest. $161.50. So this one was Regions. Okay. $161.50. And the remainder that would normally be earmarked to go to principal, we're going to absorb it. Okay, we're going to steal it. We're going to remove it from the lower APR account, which is Regions. Okay, so we're going to absorb the $323 bucks. Okay. All right, and again, America, we do not want to send too much payment to an account that is at 12% when we have a 30% account on the board. So we're going to do whatever we know how to do, okay, in order to steal some amount from that lower APR account, okay? And in this case, we figure out that the amount we're going to absorb is $323 bucks, okay? We try to present the principal. Because if we have the options of sending principal to a lower APR account, and we have that options to send principal to a higher APR account, we're going to achieve greater result by sending the principal to the higher APR account. Okay. All right. So now, let's move down to the next account. Navy Federal credit card, $93 and $2,780. Navy Federal, just like Regions, has two payments going to the Navy Federal credit card. Okay. And Navy Federal credit card is at 18%. And again, America, we do not want to send too much payment to an account that is at 18% when we have a 30% account on the board. So for that reason, we're going to absorb one of these two amounts. But which one will best absorb? $2,780 represents bills that could go on a credit card. Okay. $93 is the minimum monthly payment on the Navy Federal credit card. So we know we cannot absorb the $2,780 because we have to take care of these bills. So it's going to be the 93. But when we take a look at the Navy Federal is at 93% for credit utilization. And again, we are in the 90s. We are too close to 100%. The balance owed on the Navy Federal, $3,720. The credit limit, $4,000 bucks. Okay, too close to the credit limit. For that reason, America, we're going to be less aggressive. Okay, so we cannot have a full absorption, like I mentioned from a past lesson. It has to be either a no absorption or a partial absorption. Okay. Well, now let's figure out how Navy Federal arrive at this $93 that they're charging for minimum payment. Okay. Let's take a look at our notes. Navy Federal, the statement date is on the 4th of the month. We assume that we're doing all these transactions after the 1st, after the 3rd, after the 4th. So after the statement date, but before the due date. Okay. So Navy Federal is charging $93. So that's Navy. And we're trying to figure out how Navy arrive at that $93. Okay. We know that most of the credit cards charges interest plus 1% of the statement balance. Okay. So this Navy Federal is charging interest plus 1% of the statement balance. That's how they arrive at that $93 for monthly payments charge, a minimum monthly payment. Okay. So 1% of the statement balance plus interest. Okay. The statement balance, we'll assume it's $3,720. And again, we're doing this transaction after the statement date. So after the 4th, we're doing this transaction. Let's assume we're doing it 1 day later, on the 5th of the month. Okay? And again, this $93 made up of interest plus 1% of the statement balance. Statement balance, $3,720. Okay? So now, if it is $3,720, what's 1% of that? So $3,720 times 1% equals 2, so $37.20. Okay, that's that 1% portion. So 1% of the statement balance. The statement balance, $3,720. So 1% of $3,720 is $37.20. Okay. Again, Navy is charging interest plus 1% of the statement balance. So that 1% represents what goes towards the principal. Because interest is interest. Okay. So that 1% will be principal. $37.20. Okay. So now the interest portion will be the remainder. Remember, total they're charging $93. So 93 minus 37.20. Okay. So now we have $55.80 for interest. Okay. So you'll be $55.80 in interest plus that 1% of the statement balance, which is $37.20. Okay. $55.80 in interest plus that $37.20, which is 1% of $3,720. Okay. That is the breakdown. All right. So now, again, going back to the Navy Federal, we have $93. We are too close to saturation point, too close to 100%, so we're not going to have a full absorption. So it has to be a partial absorption. Okay? On the Navy, we're going to at least try to pay our interest. Okay? So whatever that would normally be earmarked for principal to go to the lower APR account, that's the amount we're going to absorb. Okay? So in this case, we're going to absorb the $37.20. Okay. And again, we're gonna at least try to take care of our principal, of our interest, 55.80. So we're gonna pay the interest. Okay. But we do not want to send too much payment to an account that has a lower APR, 18%. So that principal, we're gonna send it somewhere else to the account that has the higher APR, in this case, best egg. Okay. So this $93 would no longer be 93. Okay. The interest portion, 55.80. Okay. And the remainder, 37.20, gonna go to the higher APR account, best egg. Okay. This is how, America, you properly devise, you properly create a good debt repayment method. Ambroise Method. Alright, America, I'll give you about 5-10 seconds to take a look at what's on the board, and then we're going to continue with the exercise. Alright, America. So now let's figure out our numbers. Let's find out our totals. Best egg now has 485.30, 250, 250 bucks, $323 and 37.20. Okay. And by the way, when you're trying to, America, trying to figure out how these lenders, these creditors arrive at the monthly payments charged, remember that our government allowed these big creditors to do whatever they want. Sometimes they use a different formula than what we're using here. Okay? So for each lender, if you're gonna do that kind of strategy, okay, you have to be aware of how they arrive at that monthly payments charged. Okay? Because remember from past lesson we talked about how some of these lenders could use a average daily balance. Some could use a previous daily balance, previous balance method. And some could be using an adjusted balance method. Okay. There might even be some more out there that I'm not even aware of, like I mentioned from a past lesson, because again, our government allowed these big banks, these big creditors to do whatever they want. There is no uniformity as to how they arrive at this monthly payments charge. Okay, sometimes you have one lender using one method, you have a different lender using a different method. And again, folks, our government allowed these big banks, these big creditors to do whatever they want. Okay, so not only we have three main ones, inside each one there are variations. But since the average daily balance is the most used one, most utilized one, let's concentrate on the average daily balance. You got some lenders that might use an average daily balance with compounding. You have some that might use an average daily balance method without compounding. And in this average daily balance, there's even more variation. You have some that might use an average daily balance, including new transaction. And you have some that exclude. So this one include, and some that exclude new transaction. Okay. So even again inside the average daily balance, there are different variations inside of it. So again, folks, if you're gonna use that kind of strategy, be mindful of how they arrive at this monthly payment charge for the cycle. Okay. All right. All right. Now, going back, let's figure out our total. Best egg 485.30 plus 250 plus 323 plus 37.20. Okay, so best egg we have a total of 1,000. So now, which account was best egg for greater results? Regions P-Lock for greater liquidity. So Regions P-Lock. And the Navy Federal was the third account for alternative account for movements of income and movement of expenses. Okay. So best egg will have a total of 1,000. $95.50. Okay. Regions personal line of credit will have a total of Regions 161.50 plus $1,205. So 161.50 plus 1,205. Regions will have a total of $366.50. 1,366.50. Okay, so best egg $1,095.50. Regions $1,366.50. Okay, and the last and final account, Navy Federal 5580 plus $2,780. Navy Federal will have a total of $2,835.80. Okay, so Navy Federal $2,835.80. Okay. Again, going back to our steps, which account? We know we're going to be using these three accounts: Best Egg, Regions, and Navy. So Best Egg, Regions, and Navy. H, how much of a payment to go to this account? Best Egg, $1,095.50. Regions personal line of credit, $1,366.50. And Navy Federal credit card, $2,835.80. So going back to our steps, the last and final steps that we have to answer, the last and final questions, to pay down or off which debt. Okay. So that would be our workflow. Okay, so our workflow. Remember, we're doing a scenario for a single mom. She gets paid on the 7th and on the 21st. So 7, 21, 21st. Okay. And we're assuming that these two paychecks are equal. So $5,297.80 divided by 2. So she has $2,648.90 on the first paycheck and $2,648.90 on the second paycheck. Okay. All right, America. So now let's figure out once that $2,648.90 touched down the checking account. So where does the money go? Remember, we have best egg for greater results. We have regions per PLOC for greater liquidity. And we have Navy Federal for movements of income and movements of expenses. Okay. All right. Let's take off the first paycheck first. First paycheck is on the 7th, so this first paycheck will cover anything between the 7th all the way to the 20th. Okay? All right. This is when, America, you have to pay attention to the due dates, especially for bills, expenses that you need cash or cash equivalent for. Okay. All right. Well, let's take a look at the due date. Electricity is due on the 28th. This first paycheck, electricity is due on the 28th. Okay. Water is due on the 28th. YouTube TV due on the 28th. Netflix due on the 28th. T-Mobile on the 28th. All these amount out on the 20th, which is after the 20th. Okay. So we okay on those. Okay. Groceries doesn't have a due date. I guess single mom could do her groceries towards the end of the month, okay, in order to give this account a boost, okay? Because remember, most of these accounts, the interest rate on them is being computed average daily, most of them. Fuel, $380 total. Fuel doesn't have a due date. I guess she could put fuel on the vehicle once a week, so this fuel might create a little problem for us. Dining out doesn't have a due date. I guess she could decide to go to the restaurant towards the end of the month. Beauty and skincare, $500, doesn't have a due date. She could shop for a beauty and skincare product towards the end of the month, okay, in order to help these accounts. Clothes and shoes doesn't have a due date. She could do her shopping for clothes and shoes towards the end of the month. Car insurance is due on the 26th. First paycheck covers anything between the 7th and the 20th. Okay, so we're good on the car insurance because car insurance is after the 20th. Okay. The allowance for her daughter, she gave her daughter $90, is due on the 28th. And again, that's after the 20th, after the 7th, after the 20th. So that's not going to create any problem for us. The prepaid college for the benefit of a daughter is due on the 26th. And again, that's not going to be any issue. That's after the first paycheck. The house rent is due on the 10th. Okay? For $1,000. Now this house rent is due on the 10th. 10 is between 7 and 20th. Okay? So we have to take care of this house rent on the first paycheck. Okay? And the house rent is $1,000. Landlord need cash or checks for that house rent. So Best Egg cannot take care of that. Navy Federal credit card, it's a credit card, cannot take care of that. So the house rent for $1,000, the account that offers greater liquidity, in this case, Regions PLOC, will have to take care of the house rent. So Regions. Okay? For $1,000. Alright? Navy Federal credit card is due on the 28th. And again, that's after the 7th, after the 20th. That's not going to create any problem for us. Regions personal line of credit is due on the 26th. And again, that's after the 7th, after the 20th. No issue there. Best Egg is due on the 28th. Okay. And again, that's after the 7th, after the 20th. No issue there. Okay. So now, $2,648.90 on the 7th. So far, we've allocated $1,000 out of it. Okay. The remainder, or some of it, will go towards the account that has the higher APR, Best Egg personal loan. Okay. Remember the order of priority. Okay. And then we have to reserve a little bit of that fuel. So Best Egg total needs to have $1,095.50. So now Best Egg gonna receive the entire $1,095, $1,095.50. Okay. And Navy Federal gonna receive the remainder. So the total was $2,648.90 minus $1,095.50 minus $1,000. So Navy Federal will keep $553.40. Okay? $553.40 is big enough or large enough to cover a portion of that fuel. Because remember, we had a little issue with the fuel. Okay? Because she has to put fuel in the vehicle once a week. Okay? In any event, $553.40 is bigger or larger than $380. Okay? Remember, all these could go on a credit card, which is Navy. Okay? So Navy, 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 Navy Federal, and Navy Federal. Okay. The only thing we have to be a little careful about was this fuel. Okay. Well, now we have enough on the first paycheck to cover the fuel. Okay. All right. It wouldn't even be $380. It would be part of $380. But either way, we have $553.40, which is larger or bigger than $380. Okay. So now that was the first paycheck. And again, America, gotta know how to allocate this paycheck. Always pay attention to the due date, okay? Especially for bills, expenses that you need cash or cash equivalent for, okay? In this case, just the house rent, $1,000. That was coming up due before the 7th and the 20th. Everything else was after the 20th, okay? All right. Now on the next paycheck is on the 21st. So that paycheck will take care of everything between the 21 to the end of the month. Okay? All right. Best Egg $1,095.50. Best Egg received the entire thing, $1,095.50 on the first paycheck, which means now Best Egg not gonna receive anything. Okay. Regions personal line of credit, Regions only received $1,000 on the first paycheck. Regions needs to have total $1,366.50. Okay. So now the remainder, Regions will get the remainder, which is $3,066.50. Okay. Remember, for total, it needs to be $1,366.50. Okay. All right. And Navy Federal only received $553.40 on the first paycheck. Navy Federal needs to have total $2,835.80. So now Navy Federal will receive the remainder. Okay. And the remainder, $2,835.80 minus $553.40. The Navy Federal will receive $2,282.40. Okay. All right, America. Remember, total paycheck was $2,648.90. When you add these two up, we should arrive at $2,648.90. So it's $366.50 plus $2,282.40. Sure enough, $2,648.90. Okay? So our numbers are perfect. Okay? And again, America, gotta know how to allocate these paychecks. Okay? Take a look at the due date. Take a look at bills, expenses that you need cash or cash equivalent for. Okay? All right. Now we know Navy Federal gonna take care of all the bills that could go on a credit card, $2,780. The allowance, $90. You need cash, so the account that offer greater liquidity, Regions PLOC. So it'll be Regions. Okay. We'll take care of that. Prepaid college tuition, again, you need cash, so the account that offer greater liquidity, Regions PLOC. Okay. We'll take care of that. Okay. House rent, again, you need cash. The account that offer greater liquidity, Regions PLOC. Take care of that. Navy Federal credit card, $93. Navy Federal will take care of that, but only part of it, which was $55.80, because the other part was sent to the account that offer greater liquidity, which was Best Egg. Okay, so $55.80 out of the 90. So Navy Federal will take care of that. We'll keep that. Regions personal line of credit, okay, $484.50. Regions will take care of the interest and send the remainder towards the account that has higher APR, which is Best Egg. So Regions will take care of part of it. So this one, the 93 was only for Navy, was only $55.80. And the Regions personal line of credit, $161.50. And that'll be Regions. And again, Best Egg will absorb the remainder. Now Best Egg, $485.30, $485.30. So Best Egg. Okay. So now, America, we know which account will take care of which debt. Okay. All our debts are accounted for. We know all of these. Navy Federal will take care of all of these. These three that you need cash for, the account that offer greater liquidity, Regions PLOC will take care of those. Navy Federal credit card, okay. Only the interest portion will go to Navy, 5580. Regions personal line of credit, only the interest portion will go to Regions, 16150. Best tags, 48530 plus everything else. Okay. All right. And again, we know which bill will take care of which debt. Okay. So now our process is complete. Okay. For this cycle. Okay. And the following cycle, we're gonna do the same thing. All right. And the number will be, well, it all depends. Because maybe in the middle of a period, one credit card company or one lender might change something. Okay. All right, America. I'll give you about 5-10 seconds to take a look at this real quick, and then we're going to continue with the exercise. All right, America. For most of the other debt repayment groups, especially that snowball group and that avalanche group, these two groups only uses cash flow, $250. Okay. So it would be the regular payment plus the cash flow going to that account. Look at us. Somehow we're able to still to take away from the lower APR accounts an additional $323 and an additional $37.20. Okay. And this best tag was at 30%. Okay. So look at how many different payments we have going to the best tag. 1, 2, 3, 4. 4 different payments going to that best tag, and best tag was the biggest enemy. Best tag was the troublemaker, 30%. We have 4 different payments going to the best tag. Okay? This is how, America, you pay off debt. Not this nonsense that the other debt repayment methods are doing. That snowball group, that avalanche group. Because these two groups, that snowball group, that avalanche, these two, they don't go far enough in eliminating that quickly. You'll be just cash flow going towards that account. In the case of that snowball, it'll be cash flow, $250, going to the lowest balance account. In this case, the lowest balance one is the Navy Federal. But remember, America, Navy Federal was about 18%. While attacking an 18% account when you have a 30% account on the board. And not only that, you only be cash flow $250 going to that account. For us, not just cash flow and the minimum payment, we have additional payments going to that account. Okay? We have absorptions going to that account. Okay? That avalanche again, $250. They'll send $250 to the higher APR account. In this case, the higher APR account is best tag personal loan, 30%. So it'll be $485.30 plus an additional $250. Okay. But for us, not only we have $45.30 going to that account, the additional $250, but we have 2 additional payments going to that account. We don't have 2 payments going to accounts. We have, in this particular example, 4 payments going to that account. And again, 1, 2, 3, 4. Okay? That's how you pay off debt. That's how you get rid of debt. So, where does those 2 additional payments come from? Again, they come from a location, okay? Another location, but we sent it to a location that is more beneficial for us, okay? And again, folks, we do not want to pay 30% on $4,247.38. We might try to pay 30% on a much lower amount. In this case, it will be $42,47.38 minus the total, $1,095.50. Okay. With Velocity Banking Group, well, these folks, they generally uses the wrong account as their debt repayment, as their debt tool. Okay. They'll use the Regions PLOC to chunk. In this case, we did not chunk, and they wouldn't even be able to chunk because they're over 80%. This group wants to stay under 80% or at 80%. Okay? So they didn't transfer, we didn't transfer. But they'll use the Regions PLOC as their debt tool. Why? Because Regions PLOC offer greater liquidity. Okay? Remember from past lesson, from case study number 5, okay, choosing the account America that offer greater liquidity will not get you to the finish line faster. Okay? In this case, they'll send the extra cash flow, $250 in this example, okay, to the Regions PLOC. And that cash flow keep getting dumped into the Regions PLOC, so they'll use the Regions PLOC as a holding account, as an escrow account for 3 months, 6 months, 9 months, 1 year, before they could execute the next chunk. Okay? And again, when they finally execute that next chunk, you'll be sending a payment to a higher APR account. When they chunk, and later on, they're gonna keep payment to the lower APR account. For 3 months, 6 months, 9 months, 1 year. Yeah. We've gone over all of that in case study number 5. Okay? So in the same cycle, they'll be paying a higher APR account, and they'll be paying a lower APR account in the same cycle. Okay? After whatever time it takes them to amass enough money to chunk, okay? Whether it's 3 months, 6 months, 9 months, 1 year, once they chunk, so they're gonna be sending payment to the higher APR account. That'll be best egg. And in the same cycle, they're gonna start keeping cash flow in the lower APR account. The lower APR account will be Regions PLOC. Okay. You see, in one cycle, later down the road, they'll be paying a higher APR account, and they'll be paying in the same cycle a lower APR account. Okay. Gotta be consistent. You cannot pay a higher APR account and then pay a lower APR account in the same cycle. Okay. Sometimes in the following cycle, on one cycle they'll pay the higher APR account, and then the following cycle they'll pay the lower APR account. But generally, it's in the same cycle that they're doing both, generally. Okay? But it all depends on the statement date and things like that. Okay? So, cannot pay a higher and pay a lower. Okay? Velocity banking, not consistent at all. Okay? Not only they're using the wrong account, these folks, again, they think that the account that offer greater liquidity will get them to the finish line faster. Okay? The account that offer greater liquidity, a lot of times, will not get you to the finish line faster, especially in this example, when it was at a lower APR, 12%. Regions PLOC offer greater liquidity, but Regions PLOC was at 12%. Okay? All right, America. That is why on our method, Ambroise Method. Okay? we know for sure, especially in this particular example, that these three, that repayment group will never be able to compete with us. That snowball, that avalanche, velocity banking group. Okay. These guys, like I mentioned from a past lesson, they got too many weaknesses. Okay. Too many. That snowball, that avalanche, these two are not going far enough in eliminating that quickly. Not only that, that snowball 99% of the time is attacking the wrong account. Okay. Navy Federal low balance, but the Navy Federal has a low APR. Remember, America, low on low is no good. Low balance, $3,720 was lower. Navy Federal was at 18%. 18% was lower than 30%. Low on low is no good. Okay. So the next argument will be, well, we're trying to attack the lowest balance. Okay. That's not even an issue for us, because on our method, what do? Okay. We're constantly attacking the higher APR account via transfer, okay, via payments. Look at all those different payments going to that account, okay, via movements, okay. So in our example, let's say 4247 minus 1095, we're already lower than them in just one cycle. And again, it would have been $4,247. $4,247 minus, we got 1,095 going to the best deck. 1,095. 50. Let's wind down real quick. 4247 minus 1,095. 50. So we had a little over 3,000. Okay. So in one cycle we had $3,151.50. So in one cycle, that balance on the best egg will be lower than the balance on the Navy Federal. $3,150.50 is lower than $3,720. Okay? So America, again, do not attack lowest balance account. Okay? You'll be going backwards. All right? All right, America, I'll give you about 5-10 seconds to take a look at what's on the board real quick, and then we're going to continue with the exercise. All right, America, again, my name is James Ambroise. I am the author, creator of Ambroise Method 1.0 and Ambroise Method 2.0. Ambroise Method is a revolutionary debt repayment method that offers greater results in terms of reducing interest costs compared to debt snowball, debt avalanche, velocity banking. Thank you, Jesus. Until next time, America. Good morning.